The informed consent form that I chose was from Caraminico Counseling. They're a group located in Pennsylvania. And upon my initial reaction to the form, I felt it did cover a lot of aspects when it came to providing informed consent with a client. It touched on how they were given appropriate information as far as credentials of the counselor, training and practice of the counselor. It also discussed how the client would agree to be referred to another practitioner if the counselor felt the client's treatment was outside of their training or experience. So I think all of this is really important information for the client to be aware of. And they additionally included how they could be referred to another counseling group altogether if that was best seen fit. It then proceeded to acknowledge each of the documents that the client was given, such as billing information, HIPAA information, the client's rights, and so on. So those were listed as documents, and then the client was to sign stating that they read and understood all of those documents. When looking at the form compared to the ACA Code of Ethics, I did feel it was strong, but somewhat lacking in some aspects. So there wasn't really any mention of the client's right to leave or terminate their counseling process at any time, which I feel like is, one of the biggest things that the client needs to be aware of. They address how they're agreeing to participate in therapy, but they don't mention the ability to leave. So my initial thought was that this might be included on one of the other forms that the counselor provided for the client, such as the client's rights and responsibilities. I do just kind of feel like it should be something that maybe should be mentioned in writing on the form itself. I think sometimes the language or format of the informed consent can be challenging or somewhat misleading when interpreting it. For example, like in Lust Garden, she wrote how in a study that she did, she found in one study that informed consent documents were just too complex for the population to comprehend because the documents did not contain explicit explanations. So this was working with a group of college students, but I think this really applies for anybody. If the words are not stated right there in front of them and they're not explicitly reading that while they're signing that paper, it might be something that they're not really aware of. So if that's listed on a separate form, they have a stack of forms and they're just agreeing that they read all of those, they might not have it right in front of them on that form that they're signing. It can be a bit misleading. There are a lot of things that did line up with the ACA Code of Ethics as far as acknowledging the training and the experience of the counselor. The Code of Ethics also mentions that the client's agreeing that they're aware of the counselor's training and experience, so including that obviously was a really big component. When I compared the form to the Pennsylvania State Rules and Regulation, I found it was similar to when I compared it to the Code of Ethics. PA requires the form to state the purpose of the services being provided, the right to withdraw, language guidelines, and more. So some of these, like I said, at first glance on the informed consent form, they're not mentioned. So they may be mentioned in the additional forms. They obviously have to be in those forms. I just thought that the setup of that might be a little bit misleading and a little confusing for some people. So the client is signing that they read those forms prior to signing that informed consent. Maybe they forgot, maybe they missed over that part. So I think that initial informed consent should just have provided a bit more information and been a little bit more explicit.